What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of Behind Emmy Lines, a Texas A&M football podcast. I am your host, as always, Tony Catalina, and I am joined today with a very special guest, Lulu Kesin of the Greenville News. Everything, all things South Carolina Gamecocks. Lulu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's fun to hop back on here.
Yeah, I say this last time, and I try to get as many Massachusetts people on here as I can. Try to infiltrate the South a little bit. So, anytime we can do this again, I wanted to jump at the opportunity there.
Absolutely. Very proud to represent Massachusetts in the SEC with you.
Absolutely. I just flew in from Logan last night too, so I mean, we don't got to get too deep in the woods. I mean, into the weeds there, but everything went smooth. I can't say that for everybody, but Logan wasn't too bad this time around.
Good. I'm glad. I know someone currently stuck at Logan, so
Oh,
hopefully
geez.
they're out of there smoothly. But yeah,
Yeah.
crazy flight times right now.
Yeah, and speaking of crazy, look at the smooth transition here. But I was one of those people who thought really highly of South Carolina coming into the season. I thought Lenore Sellers, I saw it firsthand what he did to A&M in this defense last year. A lot of preseason Heisman hype. So I ask you, Lulu, as somebody who's boots on the ground, what's going on with South Carolina, and why is it the way it is right now?
Yeah, there's a lot that's happened, especially in just the last 2 weeks. Obviously, Shane Beamer firing offensive coordinator Mike Shula, that was something that people really wanted. But I do think in some ways it's a little bit of a band-aid on the bullet hole. I think that there's still a lot of issues to be fixed. And I think that the letting Shula go obviously made sense. I believe that. I'm with that take. I think South Carolina's offense overall has just underperformed in a lot of different ways. Yes, it's play calling. Yes, it's execution. They go hand in hand. And I don't think that South Carolina's players are necessarily like they should escape all blame because a lot of it does fall on them in some regard. But it was definitely a team that, like, when I think back to last year, I think of Texas A&M and M and Missouri and those two wins, and that's sort of the vision I had for this team going into it. And I didn't necessarily think that there was sort of like the Arch Manning level of hype heading into the preseason. I wasn't necessarily there with Lenoris, but I did think that he absolutely did enough to put himself in those Heisman conversations. And it's hard to make sort of sense of how he's played individually this year just because the offense has struggled in so many ways.
Yeah, and you touched on that, but what do you think the issue is? Is it the weapons out the outside? Is it I know Rocket Sanders isn't there anymore. Is it the guys up front? Just if you could pinpoint to something that's the biggest issue, where do you think it falls on the offense?
Yeah, it started off where I think the offensive line was a really kind of easy place to blame. And honestly, like it was kind of fair to do that. In the first couple of games, Lenoris really didn't have much protection at all. He was pressured. I think at one point he was pressured like the second most in all of college football. I might be wrong on that, but I believe that was at least heading into the Alabama game around then. The offensive line, obviously, Shane fired the offensive line coach after the LSU loss. Pre-snap penalties from the O-line were an issue. So it sort of felt like even when South Carolina running backs, wide receivers, Lenoris was trying to kind of get a flow going, those pre-snap penalties or sort of the sacks would just set everything back. I do think that there is still, like, for example, the Ole Miss game, Lenoris just missed wide open receivers. He had some missed throws. I'm not going to sit here and say that was the story all season, but I think overall a fair statement is that kind of addresses all the issues is just there's no chemistry right now. It doesn't seem like there's any synergy between any aspects of the offense. And I hear what Shane Beamer is saying when he is saying, like, in certain ways they're close, because you look at games and you're like, oh, they're a play away from winning. Oh, but a lot of it, their defense kept them in the game. But to directly answer your question, I think that there was a drop down in the run game. I think that replacing Rocket Sanders, even though there was maybe 4 or 5 running backs heading into this year that could, help out, it's just not the same level of honestly, like, blocking that allows the running backs to thrive, but also they're not necessarily getting a ton of forward yardage as well. Wide receivers, it's odd. A lot of freshmen have beat out some returners for spots, which kind of leaves some question marks. I mean, I'd argue probably the hungriest players on the team are 18-year-old freshmen that just kind of want to stick their nose in everything. But it's just been a weird year, and I know that doesn't sound like that real of a journalistic take. It's just there's a lot of question marks where you look back to what they were able to do last year, and you really wonder why nothing is replicated so far.
Yeah, it's good word though. You said weird because when I started to do my study on South Carolina and I saw that the book had him like as a 17-point underdog, and my fresh memory is what Lenoris was able to do to this team last year and just how talented that he is and what I thought this offense could be. And I know it's not the same and it's not apples to oranges, but when I see something like that, I think of the coach, right? And I think of Shane Beamer. So kind of leads into my next question here. What is the sense around there about Coach Beamer? Is there starting to be like thin ice there? What's the situation that he's walking around down there?
Yeah, it's interesting because this year truly it shows how quickly, a program can change or a program can stop trusting a coach. And I think South Carolina's in an interesting spot because this is their first year with athletic director Jeremiah Donati. Obviously, Ray Tanner was towards the tail end of Beamer's success last year. Donati he was hired early December, but didn't really take over. So I believe if I have this right, he had like a little bit he oversaw or knew that Shane was getting a bit of an extension, but it was a lot of Ray Tanner. That's all to say. I think the fan base, some are like Beamer being fired would be the solution. Like Vandy loss was the worst loss of his career, like all this stuff. Other people are like firing Beamer wouldn't solve anything right now. I think overall, probably the most popular take is that he needs to slam dunk hire this next offensive coordinator. He has had trouble with offensive coordinator hires success. I guess how you could put it, obviously Dowell Loggins, I think what worked really well for Dowell last year is his chemistry and sort of that relationship with Lenoris. And I think that really, really kind of flourished towards the end of the year. And then right as things were getting good, he took the App State head coaching job. So it's hard to say really what Dowell could have done in the system, year three, but obviously year one was a bit of a struggle. I think the biggest sort of take on Shane Beamer in regards to guards job security is just like this next offensive coordinator needs to know how to call a college offense, like veer away from the NFL experience and really narrow in on what's working in college football in 2025.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I look at Shane Beamer. He's an energetic guy, somebody who's passionate on the sideline. Is somebody who's there. What is the sense? Is the buy-in still there from the team? How do the coaches or how the players responding to Beamer in a year that obviously didn't go the way that anyone thought that would?
Yeah, so this probably is a hot take from me just based on the reaction from the fan base. But basically, a couple of weeks ago, Shane said something about like, I know you guys are tired of me hearing it, but we had a really great practice this week. And it was something that he first mentioned after the Ole Miss loss last year, which was their worst loss. They basically had a bye week, had, a really great week of practice, and then had a really bad loss. And he was like, it's so frustrating when you feel like things are going well, and then on game days, something else happens. And Shane sort of kind of kept echoing that sentiment. And to me, I was just like, okay, that's a coach proving that the buy-in is still there. That's a coach acknowledging that things aren't falling apart. Things aren't just getting executed on game days. I agree that all that matters is what happens on game days, but people I felt like were sort of twisting it as he was saying like this moral victory of like, oh, at least practice went well. To me, that was him being transparent. I mean, I understand that you can't necessarily believe everything when you're not there, but it was just sort of him saying like, hey, our guys are still locked in. They want to win. They want to turn this season around. And that's the vibe I get from players after every game. We talk to Lenore Sellers after every game, win or lose, and he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't. He's a bad example because he really doesn't change his emotion at all. But like even players, I've seen defeated South Carolina players before after the LSU loss last year, and it doesn't seem that way right now. Yes, they're frustrated, but it does still seem like Shane has the effort, attention, everything that you would want. Things just aren't going well in games, and there's a lack of execution at critical times where it feels like even when South Carolina's only down seven, they're down 17.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you had said it earlier about the defense kind of bailing out the offense and sometimes. So I kind of want to switch sides a little bit. the passing attack, they're top six in the conference in defending the pass, but stopping the run has been a real issue, right? They're 14th in the conference, and that's something A&M does really well. So when you look at this defensive unit, obviously A&M's hanging 40, 38 points on teams on the road, and they're being really impressive at times. But if South Carolina is going to pull this, three-score upset on A&M and Kyle Field, is it the defense that gets it done, or how do you see it shaking out like that?
Yeah, I think it'd be easy to say it would be up to the defense, but it feels like every time the defense bails out the offense kind of can't step up and provide. So the LSU game, it really felt like and I'm not saying that the level of offense A&M has is comparable to LSU, totally different, but it felt like defense was making big play after big play after big play. I mean, like forcing a fumble in the end zone, interception on the 1 yard line. It felt like every time the opposing team's offense got sort of closer and closer, the defense was like, no, we're still here. And then you have the Alabama game where it really was just a perfect display of competitive defense from Clayton White's group until the fourth quarter. And they let this Alabama team gain confidence in the last 6 or 7 minutes. So I think that South Carolina's defense, once again, is going to have to lead. But at the same time, you can't expect the world of them if their offense isn't going to meet them halfway. And granted, you want to expect the world from both teams. That's what a game is. It's giving 110%. But I just think this year, especially, A&M is so good. And I think that regardless of what South Carolina's defense does, it's hard to look at what South Carolina's offense has done and say, okay, they can at least match it or do a little bit more.
Yeah, so I'm actually interested in what you think of this because I know that A&M, this is the season you mentioned, they're really good. They believe they're good. They know they're good, but fans are still got that little bit of nervous energy around them because they don't want to turn into a pumpkin here and this season kind of be a mirage. I believe that matchups make fights, and I believe that sometimes teams just play better against other teams. That was last year, right? I thought A&M was a better football team than South Carolina last year. I feel the same way this year, but Lenore Sellers is the type of guy that they struggle with. Do you feel like Shane Beamer's, hey, we're doing well in practice, we're putting things together? Do you find or think that's plausible that that would all click this week against a team they've already beaten and derailed their season last year?
I mean, I'll say yes, because I do think that one, having the bye week, obviously that's extra time and it helps. And I'm not sitting here saying that the players didn't love playing for Mike Shula. I can't confirm that. But so basically Shane said that Mike Furry would be play caller, but collaborative game plan group effort. I think that Mike Furry brings sort of the type of energy that Sean Elliott brought to the OL room after Teasley got fired, where it's just demanding a lot of heart and a lot of effort on an insane level. Furry is the most energetic coach I've ever come across. And I think that there could potentially be sort of that very, very late but much needed spark where things just feel different in a good way for South Carolina. Honestly, I was happy that the Netflix documentary showed the A&M game because it was cool to sort of see how Shane reacts in the locker room in between. And he had a cool line where, because obviously last year it was, okay, which quarterback is South Carolina going to face for A&M? And he was like, everyone was concerned about their two quarterbacks, but we had the one. And I think that Lenore's hasn't embodied that fully or hasn't had the opportunity to because of the way the offense has been. And if this is a type of defense that sort of struggles against someone like Lenore Sellers, it could be enough to sort of put him over the edge. I do think that Lenore's is the type of person, he's a perfectionist. He doesn't like to make the same mistake twice. And he made some mistakes against Ole Miss. So I imagine that regardless of how everyone plays around him, he's so angry about his mistakes in the Ole Miss game that he likely will play sort of a step ahead than he did before. Whether that's enough, I'm not sure. But I do think that there could be some positive change and kind of some gears turning the last week or so.
Yeah, I'm interested because I don't know. I mean, I've seen, like I said, I touched on it. You said it. Lenore Sellers, that guy is, a big, strong dude. He's hard to tackle, and A&M struggles with the guys who they got to bring to the ground and tackle, technically. And we've already seen him do what he did against them last year. Adding the fact that it's an 11 a.m. kick, I think there is some like things to be nervous and some pieces to say, hey, if you're not playing your best football, A&M could lose this game. So I say that all to say, Lulu, you don't have to give me a prediction number if you don't want to, but how do you think this game shakes out when it's all said and done?
It was funny. I was watching the Missouri game and I was saying that South Carolina has the worst luck where they always get a very good team after like a bad loss. They got Ole Miss after Kentucky last year. They got Alabama after Vanderbilt. Like they tend to get teams that just had the loss they don't need. So I do think a good thing for South Carolina is that A&M is still undefeated. They still haven't felt, what a loss feels like. And sometimes it just, any team can make that happen. That said, I do think Texas A&M takes the win. I do think that they just look phenomenal right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhat of a close game, but also I probably will print a prediction more towards like a two-touchdown win for A&M.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of there with you. I think A&M will win the game, but I think that South Carolina will cover, man. I just have so much respect for Sellers and Shane Beamer and that staff to think that, they're going to go in and get dog walked by 17, 18 points. I just don't, I mean, it could happen, right? Like that's why Vegas is Vegas, but I just have a lot more respect for that unit and I think they can put it together. But Lulu, man, I really, really appreciate it for you joining us. Please tell the people where they could see you on X, Twitter, and where they could read your stuff.
Yeah, if you just search Lulu Kesin, Kesin, Greenville News, my article should come up there. My author page, you can find everything I write. Most of my social media is just my name. X is Lulu Kesin. I think my Instagram is lulu.kesin. I share some of my work there. Um, our companies really love some TikTok coverage as well. So I think it's like Lulu Beyond Sports or something like that, where I share some visual stuff from my stories in my day. But yeah, that's where you can find most of my stuff.
Yeah, and basketball tipping off, you're great with the South Carolina Gamecocks women's basketball coverage. So if anybody's interested, that's a great program to be covering. You do a great job there. So I really, really appreciate it, Lulu, and we'll see how it shakes out this weekend.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk to you, and I love seeing all your work and all your success. So thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.
Likewise, thank you.